Welcome back to the Scat Academy. Joining me today is Kevin Lohraff from the Missouri Department of Conservation to talk about invasive species removal methods.
Well, good morning. I'm here to talk about some removal methods for invasive plants. There are three main methods of removing plants from an area, and one is a physical removal of pulling the plant, or maybe a combination of digging it and just pulling it up. And those work well when the plants are small or when the ground is wet and you can easily pull up the plant by the roots. Another method, the most common one probably, is cutting the plant and then treating the stump with an herbicide. What that does is that the herbicides will go down through the stem into the roots and kill the plant at the roots, and that prevents resprouting. That's real important to do whenever you do cut a plant, whether it be a vine or a bush or even a tree. That stump has to be treated, or that plant will resprout. Invasive plants grow very aggressively, and it's just really a waste of time if you just cut and without treating with a herbicide. Another method is spraying herbicide directly on the plant itself. And that's called what we call a foliar spray, or spraying right on the leaves. The herbicide is absorbed by the leaves and into the plant and goes down to the root, and that's also an effective way of killing a plant. So depending on the type of plant, depending on the conditions, and even depending on the size of the plant, you can use any combination of those. For example, treating bittersweet, that's a huge vine that's gone 30 foot up in the tree. It's not very practical to spray with a foliar spray. So in that case, the best treatment is to cut the vine. To treat the stump, you have a very small stump, you can treat that stump, and you avoid all that spray that you'd have to do on the leaves. The rest of the vine will just die, of course. It's the root that you really want to kill. So some of the tools that we have here, just common hand tools for removing invasive plants. If the plants are small, all you need is some hand pruners or hand shears, and this does a real good job with small vines, like vine bitters, vine honeysuckle, small plants. This works just fine. When the plant gets bigger, if it gets woodier and maybe a small shrub or a small tree, you'll need loppers. You have more leverage with these. Some of these are telescopic, so you can get even more leverage, but this has a bigger cutting surface that you can cut some of the bigger ones that you need to. Of course, the next step up would be a chainsaw. If you get into some bigger honeysuckle, even some big autumn olives and big honeysuckle, when they get 2 or 3, 4 inches or more, you do have to use a chainsaw. But here again, remember to use the herbicide in combination with the physical cutting. So it's important to treat with herbicide whatever you do cut. And Tordon is one product that's great for use with woody plants, woody stumps. In fact, all you really need to do in larger stumps is treat the living part, which is the ring around the outer part of the stump. The inner part is mostly dead wood. The outer part is live, the vascular system. So treatment with Tordon is really good at getting down and killing woody stumps. Another herbicide that we use a lot here at Runge Nature Center is glyphosate. Glyphosate is the active ingredient. It's known in brand names such as Roundup and Rodeo. And glyphosate, you can buy it in concentrate, which is what I like to do, because then you can mix it in a couple different concentrations. For example, if you're spraying just a foliar spray just on the leaves, you really only need a concentration of 3 or 4%. Whereas if you're using it to treat stumps, like we do after cutting the stump, then you need, the recommended mix is 20%. So there's a couple different ways that we use to spray treatment of stumps. One is just a handheld sprayer like this. This is a liter or 2-liter sprayer, and this is easier to carry around. You just pump it up like this. And then what I like about this particular one is it's got a bell around the sprayer, so you're only treating that stump and you're not wasting spray everywhere where you don't want it. Glyphosate is non-discriminatory herbicide, which means it will kill anything you come in contact with. So this bell kind of focuses on exactly where you need it and nowhere else. Next step up is a gallon sprayer or a 2-gallon sprayer. This is pretty easy to carry around like this, and you pump it up, and this will hold a lot more for a few hours work when you're treating herbicide with on stumps. And then the next step up would be a backpack sprayer, which is, they can get 2.5 or 3 gallons if you need to make tall, long sweeps through a prairie for Sericea lespedeza, or when you need to be out for a longer period of time. The backpack sprayer is a good way to go. I'm here to demonstrate a common removal technique for invasive plants. When plants get to be this size and bigger, sometimes it's kind of a struggle to remove them by hand, and so a quicker and easier, a lot of times more effective way is to cut the plant and then treat the stump of that plant with an herbicide. So one of the things to remember about when using herbicides is pay attention to the personal protective equipment recommended by the manufacturer. Usually it's safety glasses and gloves, and usually long sleeves, closed-toed shoes. You want to keep that herbicide off of you, protect the other plants and people around you with common personal protective equipment. So in front of me right now is burning bush, one of our invasive plants that we need to get rid of. And since this is fairly small, I can just use the hand shears like this. And what I like to do is leave about a couple inches of the stump showing, and then that makes it really visible for treatment of the herbicide. So we've got glyphosate right here in the recommended dosage of 20%. And so once you've done the cutting and you have these exposed stumps, all you do is come by and apply the herbicide on those cut stumps. And what that'll do is the stem will absorb that herbicide to go down into the root and kill the root, and that prevents resprouting. That's a very important part of invasive plant removal. Another removal method of invasive plants is foliar spray, or spraying the leaves themselves. So you see right here, I have a periwinkle plant in a dense mat, and this herbicide can be used to spray right on the leaves directly. This herbicide we're using is glyphosate, and when you're using a foliar spray, you only need like 3 or 4% of the active ingredient mixed with water. So when you have a dense mat like this, instead of just trying to pull it all up or cut it and pull it, just treating the leaves is probably the best method to do that. You'll also see there's some plants in here that we don't want to kill, like some small seedlings, and even some Virginia creeper and some grasses. So using glyphosate, you have to be careful because it will kill everything. So the best way to do this is to be real careful, but then you'll have to come back and reapply in areas that you missed, or areas that were hiding underneath other plants, or areas where you've skipped trying to avoid plants. So it's a matter of applying it where you want it, trying to keep it away where you don't want it. And you go through the whole mat, the area like that where you have the invasive plants, and you allow those plants to die, and then it'll be important to come back later and hit the areas that are still green and still living.